Well, we're in Revelation. We finished up Revelation 7 last week. And the last verse of Revelation 7, I believe, was verse 17. It was talked about how God shall wipe away all the tears from their eyes. We had spent a lot of time on 7:14 with those who came out of the Great Tribulation and had their robes washed in white, and we know that they are not actually part of the church, but they were saved. God has a different plan for them, and it talked about how in chapter 7 how they dwelt before the throne of the Lord. They served Him day and night, and they won't hunger anymore, and that the Lamb was in the midst of the throne and shall. One of the things that I had wanted to mention last week was in chapter 4, verse 17, the mention of the word feed says, "For the Lamb which is in the midst of the throne shall feed them and shall lead them unto living fountains of waters, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes." Wiping away all tears from their eyes is also mentioned in chapter 21, verse 4, I think. That's the other place it's mentioned. But I think it's significant that it says, "For the Lamb shall feed them." And we don't. Once we have a glorified body, just as Christ had a glorified body, we don't need to eat. We don't need to drink, but we will do it. We'll do it for fellowship, just as Christ did. He sat down and ate with them, but we'll do it for fellowship. We'll do it because maybe we've gotten used to it. And if you look at some of us, we like to eat, but we will do that. And plus, you recall in heaven, the tree will bear its fruit every month that we could eat of it. So again, it mentions that we eat. I think we get sometimes we get some of the wrong ideas of heaven. Not that the Bible speaks a whole lot about how the new heaven and the new earth. It talks more about the new Jerusalem than it does anything else, and it definitely speaks a whole lot more about hell than it does about heaven. But the new heaven and the new earth, the third heaven where we'll spend eternity, and the earth, I think God, Revelation tells us He's not going to annihilate the earth, and He promised that He's not going to flood anymore. And we find that He purges it with fire, but it's going to be brand new. I mean, we'll be able to walk out through the fields and sit down in what used to be a rattlesnake den and not worry about it. And it will be like it was in the Garden of Eden. We'll be able to see how God intended creation to be in the garden. And I think we can't envision that. We can't picture it. Corinthians tells us we can't picture it. I hadn't seen, ear hadn't heard, neither hath entered into the heart of man what God has prepared for those who He loves. It's going to be breathtaking. The air is going to taste, it'll taste better. It will just be a beauty that is unspeakable. We just can't imagine what it's going to be like. And but in 7, it talked about that, mentioned the word that you're going to eat, or that because God shall feed them. We'll drink as well. Revelation chapter 8, we pick up there, and it says we're coming here. We're coming up on the seventh seal. We started out who can who can open the book. The book was sealed, and there were 7 seals in the book. We've seen 6 seals. We know that a fourth part of the people are going to be destroyed because the 4th seal was death. We remember when the first seal opened that we saw the impostor of Christ, the Antichrist, was coming on the white horse. The 2nd seal, we saw that peace was taken away, and that they was going to we were going to kill one another. The 3rd seal we know was famine, and the 4th seal was death. And in that seal, was in chapter 6, a 4th part of the earth was going to be destroyed. The population, they were going to be killed with a sword, with hunger, with beasts, and of the earth. And the 5th seal was the martyred remnant, and the 6th seal that we saw was earthquake, and the sun became black, and the moon became as blood, and the stars from heaven fell to the earth as a fig tree. It shakes, and then they just fall like a mighty wind. And we saw that that every mountain and every island had moved out of its place, and that the men of the earth, all men, were hollering, were yelling, "Fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sat on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who is able to stand?" But nowhere did they repent. That was 6 seals, and we saw those in chapter 6. Chapter 7 was during the same time, but our focus looked at different. Chapter 7 says, okay, while this is going on, while what's going on, these 6 seals, here's what else is happening. And what else was happening in chapter 7 was John talks about 2 groups of people, 144,000 preacher boys, and a multitude of people who were going to be saved during the tribulation period. Those who had not heard the gospel before, they could be saved, but it would probably cost them their lives. And we know that because Revelation 13 tells us that there's a death sentence for people who won't take the mark of the beast in their forehead or in their hand. So then chapter 8 we see is the 7th seal. And when we started, we discussed the fact that there was not 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls or 7 vials. There is just 7 seals, but the 7th seal will contain 7 trumpets, and that's what we're getting. We're preparing to look at now as chapter 8 begins, and John says, "And when he, Christ, had opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour." I can't think of anywhere else in Scripture, maybe you can, that term is used in that manner, but it tells us just exactly how long that there was silence. He just says, so half hour, about 30 minutes. But so the picture is that there's silence while Christ is opening up that 7th seal for some reason, and probably, most likely, it's because of the importance of what is contained in this seal and the subsequent developments that we're going to see, because the 7th seal holds 7 trumpets, and we're about to see what that means. And we're about to realize, or John is about to realize, that what he just saw in chapter 6 with the 5 seals, he's thinking, wow, that's horrible. That's terrible. These things that's going on earth, the white horse, the black horse, the pale horse. So we see death, famine, and false religion coming. And John's thinking, boy, that's horrible. Well, but there's silence now because what a fourth part of the earth that was just mentioned in chapter 6 is nothing in comparison to what's going to happen with these 7 trumpets that lead up to the second coming of Christ. And after the 7 trumpets come the 7 bowls, or the 7 vials. And the what we saw under these 6 seals was just a taste of what is getting ready to happen. And so what lies under the 7th seal and proceeds from it is such that it's their silence. And it gives the exact amount of time of how long there was nothing. And the detail of that amazes me. With all that we've read, why would somebody think, oh yeah, it's about a half hour? But can you know that would be a long time in essence, to think here the announcement of the first trumpet or the last seal to be opened, and it's just quiet. And the scene is just silence, and everybody's sitting there, nobody mentioning a word, nobody saying anything, nobody's praising. This is, it's kind of like when the jury foreman is getting ready to announce the verdict, and you're on trial. So you're just sitting there waiting, holding your breath. You know what that's like, right, Donnie? Yeah. So he and I'm there with you. And so there's perfect silence, and everyone awaits what is about to follow. And so that sets the scene of it. And then he says, and I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. So now we see that they had 7. So the seals were open, and here 7 trumpets were given to 7 angels, and they're going to blow that trumpets. And another angel, and this another angel here is probably, or you could make a good argument, this is probably Christ. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. Now, he had a golden censer. It says this angel had a golden censer. And what normally happened is you take this golden censer, and it's like a bowl, not a very big bowl, but it's just shaped like a bowl, has a long handle on it. And this bowl you put in the fire, and you get this bowl red hot. And then what you do is you take incense and you throw it in this bowl. And since the bowl was red hot, the incense automatically starts emitting its aroma, and it fills the room with smoke. That's the picture of it. And it's the picture that pictures the prayers going up to God. So here is the Son that has this censer, and it says it has the prayers of all the saints in it. And so he could throw that incense in there with them, and then this would emit smoke, and it would to go to the Father, or into his nostrils, because the Bible says it's a sweet savor that they would pray. You also notice it doesn't say that the prayers of all the people. I think that's very worthy to note. Why? He says the prayers of all saints. Here's just one other place that we can find that the prayers of a righteous man availeth much. And the prayers, intercessory prayer, all the prayers are still there. But it doesn't, I think we take note that it doesn't say the prayers of all people are there. And obviously the answer for that is God doesn't hear the prayers of all people. He hears the prayers of his saints. The only prayer he hears of the unsaved person is, Lord, save me. Prior to that, the Bible says he don't hear the prayers. And people, of course, this is just truth, but people in a car wreck and or something, and they pray to God. God don't hear that prayer. Now He may save people because He still has a purpose for them. God's foreknowledge. Don't know what He does, and or how He does it, or why He does it. We've talked about foreknowledge. We've talked about election. But as far as the prayer goes, this is just one of the other places that show us that God hears the prayers of His saints. He doesn't hear the prayers of a lost person other than for salvation. And so we see here that this is what's going on. This is the scene. And in verse 4 it says, "And the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints ascended up before God out of the angel's hand." So you put the incense in there with the prayers, and the incense came ascended up to God. And this is not the only time. This is all the time with God. These are just prayers that, specifically, we read in chapter 5, I believe it was, when they were the souls under the altar, said, how long, O God, before you judge them that are on earth? And His answer was, still yet a little time, and then there'll be judgment. He says, so that you would rest for a little season, chapter 6, verse 10, until you, your fellow servants, also their brethren, that they should be killed, as it were, should be fulfilled. So those prayers are some of them that are being lifted up. And the reason we know that is because what is about to follow, that judgment is about to follow. So the prayers are still there, and they're going up before God. They're coming out of the angel's hand, which I think is Christ. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it into the earth. And there were voices, thunderings, and lightnings, and an earthquake. And the 7 angels, which had the 7 trumpets, prepared themselves to sound. So the angels are standing ready. They're going to sound. The prayers are going up to heaven, and they each of them have a trumpet. These angels are different from the angels who we see will pour out the 7 vials. This is not the same that does that, and has nothing to do with the 7 spirits of the Holy Spirit. That's not what these are, and of course the number is in harmony with the judgments. There is 7, and they stand before God in a place of prominence, just like what Gabriel said when he was talking to John the Baptist. He says, Gabriel says, I come from the presence of God. And he talks about how John the Baptist is going to be born in Luke 1. And so that's where it's at. And you know that, does anybody remember what the Hebrew word for trumpet was? We talked about that a while back. Because trumpet is so prevalent in the shofar, and which means a ram's horn. And that's what, when you and I think about trumpets, we think about the trumpet we see in the band. I bet what John sees is the shofar. But they're ready to announce what is going on. That's what was used during the giving of the law. They blew that horn, and it was in Israel. It was blown at the first of the month. It was also blown on all the important events, the feasts, the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Boughs, and everything. They would blow a trumpet, and so that's what's getting ready to happen. That they're getting ready to blow. And the picture here with the prayers is that this altar here set just outside of the Holy of Holies, and this altar was 1 1/2 foot square. It was 3 foot high, It was not the brazen altar, but this was the altar, the golden altar, which had held the prayers of the saints, and that what he's talking about here, that the significance of it is, it held the prayers of the saints, and they were lifted up to God. It was just outside the curtain for the Holy of Holies. And in the Old Testament, the priests would burn their incense, smoke would fill the temple and ascend to heaven. The prayers was already there, but this way they could see it. They could the symbolism of it. There they go up to God, and it's a reminder that worship and as well as prayer and intercessory prayer are an important character and a sweet smell to the Lord. The Bible tells us that is something that touches the heart of God. The incense here is composed of spices that are mentioned. You can find these in Ezekiel 30, 34 through 38. It's stacte, stacte, which is a sweet spice, and it comes from myrrh. And the other one is onycha. It's derived from shellfish. And the last one was galbanum, galbanum. It's a gum resin from Persia. And this is what they used for incense. This was their incense. And it was regarded as holy. And they used it in worship. People were forbidden to use those substances together for anything other than this time or this worship or at the temple. And it wasn't something that they could use for a common purpose. The incense was representative of the perfection of Christ, and it was only to be used during this time with prayer and when the priest would use it. So the angel takes the censer, and he did it just like they did in Exodus 37. And it was this part of the censer was made of gold, and he took the fire off of it, and he went into the Holy of Holies, and there where it says he fills it up with fire, just what he said right there, and there were thunderings, earthquakes, and lightnings, and it's a symbol of God's judgment. It's a symbol of how powerful, how important that intercessory prayer is as well, and we know that these are that part of this is in response to the praying of the saints, and those prayers are going to be answered. And so we see where the first angel is getting ready to sound. In verse 7, it says, "And the first angel sounds," and the judgment here seems to be directed toward all vegetation. We see what he says. It says, and the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood. Now this is coming out of the sky. Hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth, and a third part of trees was burned up. And then notice the next, and all green grass was burned up. So this first trumpet tells us that a third part of the trees are done. They're gone. Now, today you went to bed and there was trees out there. Tomorrow you get up and a third of the trees were gone, and all the green grass was burned up. And you notice it says all green grass was burned up. And so this is on top of the things that we saw happening in chapter 6. There's already famine going on, and there's already war going on, and death going on, and because we know it says, "And power was given unto them over a fourth part of the earth to kill with the sword, with hunger, with death, with beasts." So this is what's going on from chapter 6. Now we see that this angel blows the trumpet, and hell and fire with blood come down, and it takes out a third part of the trees and all of the grass. One thing you can recall is when Moses was dealing with Pharaoh, one of the plagues there was that they had hail come down and destroyed the vegetation, and now we see it again here with the trumpet here, that a third part and all the grass was destroyed. So, yes.
I'm confused. And I've got this marked in my Bible. If I can just ask, in chapter 9, verse 4, it says, "And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing."
That is true, but that was if I'm not mistaken, wasn't that the locusts that he was talking to? It says, and there came out of the smoke the locusts, and given power to the scorpions to have earth power. And it was commanded to them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, nor any green thing, nor any tree.
I'm confused if all the grass was burned.
That's a good question. Yeah, but it does. You notice it does use the thing. It does use the word that all.
We're talking about only 1/3 this time, aren't we?
Well, it says a third part of the trees was burned up, and all green grass was burned up. It don't say that.
Third.
Huh? All of that third is what you're saying?
Well, it could be.
That's the only thing I could figure out too, is it meant a third, since it mentioned a third part. It does say all.
I-
Figure out that first.
I'll research that and see. That's a good question. I can't give you the answer. That's one of those you should ask after church, because I only want you to ask the ones I can give you the answer to.
I just had this circle and a question mark in my
Well,
Bible.
no, that's
I mean, it looked like if you burnt the grass and everything else, you would burn some more trees elsewhere. Might be just the grass associated with that third.
with the third part. I'll have you an answer. I just flat don't remember. Either I don't remember or I never knew. But that's a good point.
And it probably is that just a third was burnt at that point. You can continue, I'm sorry.
I'll look it up. I'll find out. But I wouldn't.
Good question, Beverly.
That is a good one. Why one if we do the other? I'll find out for you. And it could very well be that it's all of that third, which you have alluded to, that makes sense. So I'll give you that. I'll get you that answer. But we see where what about all the beasts that are going, or all the animals that are going to be caught up in this when the hail comes down and destroys that part of the grass or the trees, and what they eat, because it apparently actually included in the hail and fire is blood. And so there is a lot of destruction here of vegetation, and we find that this judgment, as great as it is, just seeing this here, as much as it is, that is only the introduction. And you think about what's the livestock going to eat with the grass gone, or with even a third part of the grass gone? What will they eat? And how you going to feed the sheep? How you going to feed the cattle with all of that gone? What will the animals that live in the trees? What will the birds and those animals? What are they going to do? What's going to soak up the rain if much of the grass is gone and much of the trees are gone? How? And something that we don't think about. What's that going to do for the loss of oxygen? Trees produce O2. They cleanse the air. They take in CO2. They put out O2. What happens when a third part of that is gone? And so automatically we see that you talk about climate change. the old girl up in New York is going to really be torqued. What's her name? I don't even remember. You know which one I'm talking about, though. She's going to, yeah. So, and what's going to block the wind, and we see that also here that it says mingled with blood. Where's that blood going to go? Well, if it says that hell mingled with blood and it was cast upon the earth, well, does that mean all the earth? I think it does, because if not, it would say a third of the earth. That's why I'm worried about the all on the grass. But I'll look. What if you? Those of you that hunt and actually kill something, with blood, just for example, you're out in the woods out on a warm day and you're skinning that deer or that stinking turkey or whatever it is. What's that blood attract? Yeah, lots of them. So imagine that I've just lost so much of my trees that produce oxygen, and now it says this blood is everywhere, and so you can imagine what that is going to be like. And you notice that it says that the trees didn't just disappear, that due to the hail and the fire mingled with it, it specifically says a third part of the trees are going to be burnt up. So how long is that smoke going to be around? What's it going to do for the world as a whole in the way we breathe? We don't think about those type of things, but you think about how significant this is when it comes to changing our climate and how everything is going to be. That is just going to be horrible. That the grass is gone, or most of it is, or a third of it is, and a third of the trees are definitely gone, and everything's covered with blood. And so I got blood in the water. Where am I going to get something to drink? How am I going to find fresh water? So just that in itself is going to be horrid. And this is just the introductory trumpet. For the next one says, and the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. So here we see something else burning, and he says, John is writing, and it says, as it were a great mountain. What did he see go into the sea? Was it a mountain? Was it a meteor? What was it that he actually saw? Don't know. That's the best description. He says, but it was cast into the sea burning, and a third part of the sea became blood. So now I see that a third of the sea becomes blood. I already have blood coming, and it says that the blood was upon the earth, and you know that it was into water too. Here we see that a third part of the sea became blood, and a third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and a third part of the ships were destroyed. So now in your mind's eye, we start to get the picture of what John sees. He just describes it as a mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and
Could that be a volcano?
okay, or it could be a volcano. Could be a volcano. Could be I think it could be a meteor. Or it could be a mountain. We're just speculating, but absolutely, that'd be as good as synopsis as any. It would be fire, wouldn't it? And that would be smoke. Yeah, I think that would, because you notice where he says, John says, as it were. In other words, this is the best description that I can give. He doesn't say it's a rock. He doesn't say whether it's lava. He doesn't say what. Earlier we do read of, the reason I said meteor was that we read previously of stars falling from heaven. A large object. We know that in Egypt, the Nile was turned to blood. So here we see the same thing, and I can only imagine. John says, as it were. So I think he may have seen something that, how does he describe? So he says, well, it was as it were, or it was like a mountain. So yeah, Gary, I think it could be anything like that. That's why he puts that in there. But the significance of it was that there's going to be more smoke, and that a third part of the sea became blood. And then a third part of the creatures which were in the sea that had life, and they died. And a third part of the ships were destroyed. So whatever it did when it hit the sea, it caused a third part of the seas to be destroyed. You could, when you read it, you think, well, maybe initially you might think, well, it's localized, that it was only ships in that area where that meteor came down, where the volcano came, or the mountain. But the fact that it said that it says a third of the ships and a third of life in the sea lets us know that it's not something that is localized. It may very well be that the region that was nearest to the impact had a whole lot more destroyed than ones on the other side of the earth. But either way, now we see that a third of the sea is blood. And now look where we are with the ships setting off of the docks now, and we can't get them unloaded, and how that seems to impact us because we can't get them unloaded. Think about what happens when a third part of those ships are gone and there's just nothing there. So we're faced with that, which already in chapter 6 we're in famine now, because we're going to import everything. We're not going to work for it. We let China give it to us or something. So a third part of that is gone. And then just imagine a third part of the sea life is dead. And now I got whales and stinking stuff coming up on shore. And so my shoreline is covered with all these stinking fish. And I've got blood, which is attracting the flies. I don't have the trees anymore. I got smoke everywhere. The sea is putrid, and it stinks, and it can't support life. A third of the fish are going to be gone. And this is where I'm at. And so you see what the earth is looking like, and it's not just one section. It says the whole sea, and well, let's go ahead and read this next one too. And in verse 10 it says, and the third angel sounded. You know, they're all standing around the throne there, and they're told when to blow, and so here he blows, and it says specifically that there fell a great star from heaven. So it gives us a description of, so either a star or asteroid or something like that. I'm sure John would, this was the best description he had. And it is burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon a third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. We'll go on to 11. And the star, the name of the star is called wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, which is bitter, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter or poisonous because they were so mingled with everything else. And this seems to be a heavenly mass, something coming from the second heaven to the first heaven, but it enters the atmosphere. It's burning, and it's falling with contaminating the rivers now. So we had a third part of the seas that we just saw had given up a third part of its life, and a third part of the sea became blood. Now we see that the fresh water is being contaminated. The waters, the rivers, just like they were again back in Exodus. So now fresh water, aquatic life is gone, or at least a huge part of it. A third part of that is gone. A third part of the aquatic life in fresh water, and our water itself is gone. I'm not feeding my livestock because so much of my grass is gone. My wildlife has been affected because my trees are gone. So now comes time I have to decide what will I eat, or what's going to eat me, one or the other. You're in trouble because you can't run, Tom. Of course, all you got to do is be able to outrun Regina. So what you think? Well, what are you going to eat? Well, why do I worry about it? Because back in chapter 6, verse 8, it says that and power was given unto them for a fourth part of the earth to kill with sword, hunger, with death, and with beasts of the earth. You know, things out in the world's going to get hungry. So here we have, in chapter 6, I got a fourth. Now I have another third that's gone. That's 7/12. So that leaves 5/12 are left. So that leaves less than a third, or around a half. It leaves less than half of our resources will be left for the whole world, and the Antichrist is going to have power over 1/4 of the earth. Now it doesn't say if drinking the waters made these people die, or they died because they couldn't drink, but because of God's wrath, many have died, and so it gives us a picture, a good picture of what the earth is going to look like, and what is going on in the earth, and boy, and to think that all, you see all of this, that it's nothing compared to what hell is, and also to think that the people here on earth are still not repenting. Many of them are still not repenting. We see many people getting saved, a great multitude it says, but we also find those that shake their fist at God and says, who is able to save us from him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, and still don't turn to him. But it's going to be an awful place such as the world has never known. And that's what, if you recall, chapter 3, verse 10 says that it'll come up on all the earth, and it'll be a time of trouble such as the world has ever known. Now we get a picture of what that looks like, and with all of our technology and our air conditioners and our water softeners and all the things that man has because of his intelligence, ingenuity, and inventiveness, it's not going to do him a bit of good. None of it is going to help. The earth it's going to be hell on earth.